Hello and welcome to another edition of Head Over Heels TV. I'm your host, Angela Cedrin. How would you like to turn a customer into a lifelong raving fan? Well, have I got a treat for you today because I'm talking to Calantha Chan. Calantha is one of my absolute favorite coaches and the loveliest person. I think you'll absolutely adore her. She is an absolute expert at helping teams turn their customers into raving, loyal, lifelong fans. Cal, welcome.
Hi guys, thank you for having me.
Oh,
I'm so excited.
I know, it's such a pleasure to have you. So you did 7 years of law and you obviously come from a Chinese family. How on earth did you end up coaching people on this type of thing?
Yeah, it was quite a challenge making the transition. I think probably where it started was about 7 years ago when I had a breakup, and then that kind of sent my first and only relationship. And so since that happened, my whole world just kind of collapsed, imploded, and I just didn't know what to do with my life. So that set me on my personal development journey. I started listening to every single one of Brendan Michaud's online podcasts and YouTube videos. What happened was I finished law school, and it got to the point where in Victoria, they do it really strangely. All law students receive their result in terms of whether or not they get a graduate offer, all on the same date. So it was one Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. in August in like 2015, and I was in Malaysia at the time. So it was 6 a.m. over there, and I literally got my laptop, my phone, still in my PJs, went out to like the cafeteria area in the school, like dining area. No one was awake, and I just waited for my phone to ring. And it got to about 6:09, and it still hadn't run. So I was just like, what do I do now? Because there was just so much pressure from the whole legal faculty, from family, from friends that, I was going to be a lawyer, even though it wasn't something that I was super passionate about. And I look back now, and it was a real blessing in disguise. Like the fact that I was in Malaysia, completely disassociated from my family, to have that time to really reflect, okay, wow, is this like my free ticket to do whatever I want? And that's when I really started thinking about, well, you know what, if I could do anything, what would I want to do? And at the time, I didn't know that coaching existed, but I just knew that I loved people. So I kind of left my law career behind and helped my family run a gelato business as like a store manager. And I think from there, I remember one kid, Leon, he was 17 when we hired him at the time. Such a super shy and timid boy. But over the course of 6 months, I remember there was one Friday night, busiest night of trade, he said to me, he's like, Cal, can I serve tonight? I was like, Leon, what do you mean? And he's like, can I like go on the counter? I love customers. Like I love, I don't know, I just love serving them. And I was just like, yeah, that, of course you can. And in that moment, I think Leon really taught me that everyone's got potential. Everyone's got potential. Just so often they just don't even know it yet. So that's probably what sparked my coaching journey a couple years ago. And then I kind of ran my own business, and now I ironically help my family in HR and their business. So it's just funny how it's gone a 360.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Tell me a little bit about, I believe you're a coaching and mentor specialist as well. So, and that's with the Coaching Institute?
So what happened about 2.5 years ago when I decided, you know what, I want to pursue coaching, because I was working at Coles at the time, and I'd actually traveled to the States twice to attend personal development conferences because I didn't think that they existed in Australia. So I was like, okay, I'm going to fly there. And when I came back, I was like, okay, I want to pursue coaching. And I realized I needed to join a school and just build up my coaching foundation. So I was like, where? And lo and behold, the Coaching Institute, which is based in Victoria, it was local. It meant that I didn't have to fly overseas anymore. So I joined, and about 6 months in, I think you and I are very similar. We're just kind of dynamos and action takers. Like we're like, okay, we learned something, now let's just go action it. So I did that for about 6 months, and I coached. I think I just went on my Facebook account and like my contact list, and I was like, anyone who breathed, who was open to coaching, I was like, can I offer you pro bono sessions? So very quickly, I clocked about 70 to 80 coaching hours. And then I was working with paid clients around career coaching, finding passion. And then about 6 months into my coaching journey, the coaching institute was like, hey, Cal, we like what you're doing. We'd love for you to come in and join us as a mentor for our other students. So a real blessing, because just being immersed in that environment, I grew very quickly, and they moved me from mentor to a sales role. And I was there for about 6 months. And then what happened at the start of 2016 was I noticed, not even just at the school specifically, but just coaching in general, probably only about 1 in 50 students successfully ran a profitable business.
Wow.
And I started getting ridiculous. And I started getting really curious. So when I left the school to start my own thing, I just went and did market research. I interviewed like 100 combined, like successful business people and beginner coaches. And I just wanted to really discern what's stopping you from being successful. Like, what's stopping you from generating profitable, sustainable income? And it really came down to 3 things. It was they didn't have a structure. So they were so overwhelmed with so much stuff, so many webinars and seminars. They didn't know where to start. Mm-hmm. The second thing was they didn't understand, they didn't have support. So they were part of this community, but they didn't have a mentor or anyone to guide them, or they just felt really alone, because many of them transitioned from 9-to-5s into their own business, and it's an incredibly lonely journey. And then the third one is insufficient sales and marketing understanding. They had a big heart to want to make a difference, but they did not understand the need to have a niche, the need to focus on one ideal client, and how to even put a package together. So then I created a program called the 10K Elite Squad, which is designed to help beginner coaches get to their first 10K month, which is way more challenging than a lot of people think it is. Because I think, and we've spoken about this many times, we see lots of, become a 6-figure coach, 7-figure coach. And realistically, to do that in your first year, the first 2 years, is challenging.
Yeah, and you know what? You're absolutely right. We have discussed this a few times, but I'd really love to just cover it in this interview because I think it's important. And there are so many coaching ads that come up on Facebook, and they all claim that they're going to turn you into an overnight success and you're going to make millions, and it's so easy. And I must say, it makes me very cross, and it makes me nervous too, because I don't think it's doing the coaching industry any favors. To me, it's snake oil salesman, because when you dig below the surface, there's very little substance to these people as well. They might have had a problem they've solved in life, and now they teach people the same thing that they've done, but many of them don't have any form of education to back them, which is not to say that you need an education to coach. Clearly you can do it through life experience, but there's just no substance behind them, and it does worry me a lot. And you're absolutely right. It takes work and time and energy. You're not going to earn 7 in
you're right. Yeah. Sorry, you go.
Oh no, I'm over to you.
Yeah. I think they underplay. It's either conscious or unconscious. I'm an optimist, so I'm just gonna believe that they think what they teach, anyone else can just apply the same tactics and get the same outcome. But I think we both know, and any person who's been in business for maybe beyond the 2 to 3 year mark would know this, because you've been on the emotional roller coaster journey, is that there's so much emotional baggage that you also will need to overcome and deal with. And you must persist. You can't avoid or escape it. If you're not willing to push through it, you actually just won't get the results. And I think that's where the incongruence comes in, where you typically, because what I've noticed is typically on my Facebook, ad page, I see a lot of marketeers come on board. Now, a marketeer is great when it comes to pitching a message, but they don't understand, I think, this is a generalization, but I don't think they fully understand the emotional implications or the emotional journey that everyone, a business person, needs to go on. And they just push through. And that's why for them, for the people who are dynamos, who are action takers, which are a very small percentage of the population, just on a human behavioral level, very few people have that muscle naturally. And so the people that I see who come up on my newsfeed are naturally massive action takers. But then you've got majority, like 90% of the population, that need, you know, more of the human behavioral understanding, or they're less likely to just take action. Maybe they need more logic behind it. And then when they apply what the marketer has taught them and they don't get the same results, they're like, what's wrong with me? When it's actually like, well, there's nothing wrong with you. You just need to acknowledge that there's an emotional journey and it dips, because initially you're on a high when you make the decision and you're like, oh, it's awesome, it's really exciting. And then you're like, oh crap, now I have to sustain that momentum. But because you didn't anticipate it, it drops and you start to think that there's something wrong before it goes up again. So that's why when I taught my clients, even in the workshop, I was like, guys, you need to know that there's a dip coming. Like where you're at now, you're not even at the tip yet. The excitement's still yet to come, and the excitement will come and it's going to wane. Know that that's to come. And when they heard that, they were like, oh, wow, it's such a relief to hear this, because all I see in the media is like a dead straight linear line. Yep. We both know that's not the case.
It's not like that at all. I was talking to a client the other day and I said, look, because he's just starting on this journey of opening a business of his own. He got retrenched from big corporate, I think also because he felt he lost his soul. And I said to him, look, there are going to be days when you wake up in the morning and you say to yourself, oh, this is the greatest. I wish I had done it years ago. Life's going to be fantastic. And then by the afternoon, you're like, oh my God, it's not going to work. Who's going to want something from me? And you'll be fine. And he went, oh my God, you mean it's not just me? And I said, nope, that's pretty much all of us who run our own business.
Oh, wow. And what a blessing he's got you to tell him that, because I remember when so when I left the coaching the school and started my own business, I didn't have a mentor for about 3 months. And when you don't have a mentor who's kind of just like the Yoda, where when the anxiety or the stress comes up, you're like, hey, am I on the right track? If you don't have that, there is so much anxiety that comes up and it's a painful journey. And then when I started investing in a mentor and just knowing that I had someone who had my back, like for the next 12 months, gave me such comfort. So I'm so encouraged to hear that he's got you in his like back pocket. We can just call, because it makes such a difference.
It does make a difference. And, you know, even elite athletes have coaches. So why wouldn't good business people? But hey, I'm keen to find out more about what you're doing now. So tell me, how do I get raving fans with my customers?
Yeah, so it's funny. I think when you're first, and so I'm conscious of who your audience is as well. So a lot of them are, you know, starting out their businesses or have been in it for a few years. I remember when I first started, and even for my clients as they first started, their goal was to get a client. And it's funny because for me, building a lifelong raving fan, I use the analogy of it's like marriage. Now, I'm 27 and I'm not married, but I love studying relationships, and I have great relationship role models around me. And when I look at it, it's like that first stage is you got to build awareness. If they don't know that you exist, it's like the guy sees you around, you know, uni campus a couple of times, he starts to become aware of you, and then sees you enough times that he's like, oh, actually, I'm kind of like, I feel drawn to her. Like there's an attraction there. And then he might, you know, ask you for your number. But it doesn't mean that, you know, you're going to get married or, you know, you're going to move in together straight away. You date. And so on a scale of like 0 to 10, 0 being they don't know you, you're a complete stranger, 10 being, you know, they're a committed client. I reckon 0 to 1 is building awareness. Then like 1 to 3 is them being interested enough, like you've got enough awareness that they actually want to give you their number or ask you for your number. But then there's the dating phase. So many people think, oh, I've got their number. Okay, let's get married. And it's like, okay, no, because you getting from 3 to 10 is the dating phase. You need to travel together, maybe move in, meet each other's families before you even consider popping the question. And I think a big mistake that a lot of people make is thinking that, okay, when I ask them to marry me, I've won. Like that's the committed client. No, that's where the work begins. You actually need to take them from a 10 to like 100. That's building a lifelong raving fan. So when I think about a lifelong raving fan, it's you do the sale, but now you've got to deliver on it. You need to prove that you walk your talk, because all throughout that journey, whether it's the partner or the customer or the client, they've got their fear radar on of they're just watching you and just waiting to go, gotcha. See, you're inconsistent. See, you're not who I thought you were. See, you're not perfect. And there's so much about just being consistent in who you're being, how you're showing up, the standards that you hold. And if you want to build a lifelong raving fan, which is getting them from 0 to 100, well, you got to know what your standards are and you got to maintain them. So in a nutshell, that's the analogy that I use.
I love it. I think it's so appropriate. I'm just, my mind's sort of thinking about my online businesses and how we deal with our customers. And we do have quite a few return customers, but we always send out a personal handwritten thank you note. It's too big now to actually handwrite everyone. So unfortunately, we've had to create them and then sign them. But it's all handwritten. And I've had customers write to me and say, thank you so much. It was such a lovely note. We really appreciate that you took that time to do that, because they feel that we care more. And I mean, we sell physical products, we sell women's accessories. So there's only so much love you can deliver with a handbag, but still you want them to know that there is a personal touch to it. And we also try and wrap them nicely. And that really came from looking at Net-a-Porter's strategy. So one of the things that they did, I think they actually spent £25 on the box that they ship stuff in. Now, as a small business, I mean, you can't spend that amount of money for every bit of packaging you sell, particularly if you've got to be more competitive. But really, I thought, well, how do I make customers feel like we care about them? And then the other thing we do, obviously, is our returns policy. So we try and make that go as smoothly as possible. Our business ships up to 50, 60 parcels a day. So we don't always get it right. Sometimes somebody will send the wrong thing. So what we do is we then express the correct thing with a return envelope for the wrong one. We don't ask them to return it first. And just that gesture as well, I find people start coming back, and I get the feedback that, we'll definitely be back. Thank you so much. Having said that, for every 30 wonderful customers, you get a pretty lousy one customer, and you're always going to get people who are like that. But I think if you, for the most part, are consistent and you treat people with an element of love, and look, love is one of the values in all my businesses, it does come back, and I think people feel it as well. And interestingly, I was looking at Nordstrom's business model recently. So Nordstrom started off, it's a very old, well, relatively old business. I think it started off in the late 1800s. And they started off as a shoe shop and then grew from there. But what was interesting was that in the 1930s, the two brothers who ran it, and this is the height of the, decided that they would have a no questions asked return policy. And what that meant was you could bring in a beat up pair of sneakers that were 5 years old, not have a receipt, and they would take it back. And they still do that today. And that's been probably one of the most important strategic decisions that they've ever made, because it's really changed everything. I mean, even the way other people now do returns. So having said that, they're very, very focused in terms of getting the sales number. So every staff member is told to use discretion and good judgment when they do a return, but they also have to make the numbers. So, they're still in business to make money. But there is a story that they moved into a new premises. I think it's from the 1970s, and no one's sure if it's an urban myth or not, but they moved into this premises that used to sell tires, and somebody came back thinking the old shop was there, and they tried to return 4 tires, which Nordstrom does not sell, and they took them back. So,
wow.
It's having the best interest at heart.
I think it starts with intention, because I think no matter how they affected it, like the fact that they were willing to take back any pair of tires or shoes, it wasn't the fact that they would take back the shoes. It was the intention that they're like, you know what, the customer's always right. Or like, you know what, our job here is to make sure that you are so taken care of. And if it means that we'll need, part of that process is us taking back a pair of shoes that you've worn for 5 years, we will do it, because we want to make sure that at the end of the day, you are all taken care of. And the behavior is driven by the intention, because as you, even just as you shared how you deliver wow to your clients, like you pack it, like you hand package all of that, like that's your version of sharing love. For me, I personally don't, I used to think, like I did so many marketing courses where they're like, look, you need to have a relationship management system that auto sends, a postcard every 30 days. And I was just like, I got to the point where I'm like, why am I doing this? Like there is like zero love that's going energetically from my heart into this card because I've just automated it. I was like, that's actually not how I show love. The way that I do it is I actually only work with a select handful of clients, because how I see my business is we create a community where I can treat them like family. So my way of showing love is actually inviting my clients into my home and hosting, client sessions that way, and creating the community for them. And through that, they feel loved. But whether I did that or you do your version of it, there's no right or wrong. I think it really comes back to intention. Kind of like Zappos, you probably know this, that they're part of their recruitment process. Yeah, their recruitment process is you can, once they've recruited you, they'll actually pay you like $2,000 or $4,000 to leave the company. Like if you think you're not a good fit, they're like, please leave and we'll pay you like 2 or 4K, because they're so invested in, we just want the highest quality people. And this is actually, it's cheaper for us to like let you go and pay you than to have to like retrain the wrong person. So I think like the whole concept is starting from intention, which is how do we deliver the best quality people in the sense of our team? Because if we do that with our team, our clients are naturally going to be all taken care of. I think that that's such a high quality standard to have.
Actually, I did not know that about Zappos. Actually, it's one of my favorite businesses. I love Tony Hsieh's philosophy and what he's done.
Yeah.
But you make an excellent point. So it's really important that you have the right staff, and if you love them, they will love your customers. So it's almost like you can't have one without the other. You can't have not great staff who just don't care. You've got to have really good staff who care. And the more you love them and they care, the more they'll love your customers as well. So that's a really important thing too, isn't it?
Well, it's kind of like coming back to, I don't know if you've read the book 4 Disciplines of Execution. It's essentially a book around, super simple to read, super practical, but it's essentially a book designed to help you reach your widely important goals. So the 4 disciplines are, you got to have one wide, not 10, not 5, not 3, just 1 or 2 widely important goals that the whole team focuses on. That's in line with the greater vision. Number 2 is you got to focus on the inputs and not the outputs, because you can only focus on those things that you can control that are directly within your influence. So it's kind of like the analogy is, I want to lose weight. Well, I can't control that I lose 5 kilos, but what I can control is how much I eat and how much exercise I do every day. And if I take care of the inputs, the outputs should naturally take care of themselves. And if you don't get the right outputs, then you've got to change the inputs, tweak it until you get the outputs that you want. So that's number 2. Number 3 is you need to know whether you're winning or you're losing, because part of where momentum and motivation comes from is knowing where you are now, where you know you need to be, and the gap. And so having a scoreboard that tells you at a glance exactly where you're tracking is so compelling. And then the 4th one is a cadence of accountability, so that you're constantly reviewing what's working, what's not working, what needs to change. So applying that principle, creating a lifelong raving fan is just the output. You actually can't control that. But what you can control is how much you build your leaders, how much you invest in their development, how much you spend time giving them feedback. Because if you take care of that, your customers are going to be completely taken care of. Whereas I think a lot of the time people focus too much on the customer, which is still important, because when you train your team, it's with the customer in mind, that you actually got to take care of base camp first, and then the next milestones will naturally be taken care of. They're my thoughts. What do you think?
Oh, that makes so much sense. Look, I absolutely agree with you. I can't remember who said this, but there was a quote saying that the company's most important assets leave the office at 5 o'clock. And it's the people, because at the end of the day, anybody can copy the physical structure of your company and whatever your business is. Anybody can do that. But what makes the difference is the culture and the people. And that is very difficult to copy. So if you look at that, I mean, anybody can sell shoes online, but it's not easy to recreate their culture. And their culture is one where the customers know that they can find great products at good prices that they can return for free. And also, if they've got a problem, then somebody's going to be at the other end of a phone, and they're going to deliver wow to them to fix that problem. That's not easy. It's not easy to replicate. So, and I say this as well when I do my coaching, the most difficult thing to get right is not the systemization that has to be implemented. It's the behaviors and the leadership and the people, because unless that's it, nothing else is going to work. And you, in one of our conversations, you talked about entrepreneurs being up and down, and you know, when you go through change management, you hit this valley of death. So you get your peak, and then you go through this, and you've got to push through that. And that's how you manage change, both for yourself and your business. But unless you know how to do that and you've developed that, it's not going to work. So I wholeheartedly agree with you, Cal, that people are the most important thing to focus on in a business, because if you take care of that, then they will start taking care of your business, and that's what you want. You want people who love your business. If you don't have staff, you still have to start somewhere. And this is why I'm so keen for entrepreneurs to get coaching early, because that business is going to pick up your habits, whether they're good or they're bad habits. So you've got to get your culture right and know what that's got to look like from the beginning, not employ 10 people and then go, whoopsie, we better fix it, because that's hard. It's easier to grow with the right culture, because it becomes a habit, and it becomes a competitive advantage in your business too. It is a competitive advantage. It's one of the reasons Zappos exists. It's one of the reasons that Nordstrom exists still, because people know that they treat their customers that way and they care. And I think if you're a smaller business or you are a coach, you know, you will have a tribe of your own who resonates with you. Be authentic, be who you are, but be consistent. So, you know, not everybody's like us in terms of, I just want to love my customers. They might be a little bit more reserved, but there will always be people who speak that language and who understand it and who will want to be with somebody like that, because I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay. You know, not everybody's my cup of tea. It took me a long time to realize that. I think I spent the first 15 years of my career, it was like, why doesn't he like me? But to be authentic but true and a good person, but be consistent when you're delivering your business. And it's the same when you treat yourself.
That is such a good message. Yeah, it's such an important message around what comes to mind is like finding your uniqueness, because like I see this happen. I definitely went through this challenge myself, and I see it happen a lot in the entrepreneur and more particularly the coaching space, because when you're going on your coaching journey, you're so vulnerable. Like you're going through, you're changing week to week, month to month. You're like super sensitive to like the people and triggers around you. It's interesting. What I notice is people talk about model success, model people who have the results that you want. And I think that's good, but you also need to see that through the lens of, but what's my truth? Because what I did, I mean, I don't change anything because I learned through doing this, but what was a challenge at the beginning was I was so trusting of the people around me that the moment I found someone that I resonated with, I was like, yeah, they're right. And whatever they said, I took it as gospel. And I just took it on. And then I would, continue on maybe like a month or so. And then this sense of like incongruence, conflict would start to come up. And I was like, what's wrong? Like, why does this not feel like right? But then I'm like, but they said I needed to do this, so I must keep persisting. Maybe this is just part of the journey. And that was the whole journey of, for me, listening to my spirit and like listening to that internal voice, because no one else has the same path as you. Like, I've got to believe that we're all put on this earth for a reason. Like, we've all got our own personal missions and assignments that we're meant to carry out. That's why we've all got different strengths, different passions. So many people take for granted that, oh, I'm passionate about this, so everyone is. And it's like, no, actually, God put that desire in your heart. I don't share that. Like, I don't love dancing. You do. That's awesome. So do that. So it's discerning, wow, what's in here is so unique to me. And it takes courage, I think, to pursue and stay true to that. But when you can, I remember reading this book, Science of Getting Rich. And the guy talks about how we all like come from the same source. We all come from the same creator. And he puts desires in our mind. Now, if I shared with you, Angela, what my vision is, you're experiencing my vision through your experiences, your beliefs, your views, your values. So what you actually conjure up in your mind is different to mine. So they're like, I'm giving it to you, but you've actually created something different because you've adapted your own ideas and stuff to it. So we've got two different like visions now, and we both know that faith without works is dead. So as long as you take action, then the things that are in your mind will actually become a reality. When I read that book, it made me realize that no one can ever create my vision, because even if I shared it to them, when they take action, the real life product would be different. So I was like, it was the most liberating thing that, wow, we're just here to run our own race. You're awesome. I'm awesome. We're all awesome. Let's just do our mission and get on with it. Like, that was so liberating. But if you spend all this energy thinking about, oh, but so-and-so is doing this, so I need to model that, it's just such an energy waster.
I absolutely agree with you. And yeah, exactly. It took me a long time to realize that, actually, for many years. So I was effectively had golden handcuffs on, and I couldn't go and start my business because I had my son I had him when I was I had to raise this boy. So I was quite constrained around, I couldn't take a step back in terms of income. But I never was entirely happy working in corporate. And I'm much more of a creative ideas person, and I'm a little bit flamboyant, and I do love people. So for me, that was a real frustration. And my last paid role, I enjoyed it very much and I learned a lot, but I was also very unhappy there because I had a boss who just didn't get me. And in fact, I think I frustrated him, and he'd often say to me, "What's wrong with you?" I needed to be more square and have less ideas and be less outgoing. I don't think he liked the fact that I am outgoing, and the Italian
stifling.
Yeah, stifling for me. But what was interesting to me is that my clients loved me. And even now, I've got clients phoning me, asking me for help and saying to me, "Oh, you're always such a breath of fresh air." And when I think about it, even in my previous role, when I was a strategy director at a very big American company, the staff who worked in other departments, who worked for me, some of the other corporates who were my peers, they all said to me, "You are a breath of fresh air in this place." So I never forget, I had an office with a big glass wall. And what I used to do is I used to get colored markers and I'd write quotes all over it. And people used to come from other floors to come and visit my office and read the stuff that I had on there, because I changed it regularly, depending on what I found or what my mood was. But that was very much more about connecting people in the company as well. And one of the things I said to my boss at the time, was the MD, was, "You've got to walk the floor more." He'd stopped doing that. And I think the staff felt like he didn't care anymore. So through me, he also instituted having a monthly breakfast with some of the staff where they'd just get together and have a chat with him and have breakfast. And they started feeling more appreciated. And I think these sorts of things do filter through in the results of the company. So, yeah, don't discount your staff if you do want to make a big difference. And also, I think you have to be true to yourself. And if you are working, then if you're not happy, I think you need to change that, because there's nothing wrong with you. It's just that, and I'm not saying don't develop anymore, because we all have self-development to do till the day we die. But perhaps create a bit more self-awareness. And if it is something you have to change that, or go somewhere where you are appreciated as well.
Spot on. I think the world could do with more curiosity. And I think what helped me during that journey, because I can fully appreciate, because I worked in a corporate role myself, and I can fully appreciate that when you feel stuck there and no one kind of speaks your language, like you're asking questions like, like, don't you, like, what's the vision for your life? Like, I know if I walked around my organization at the time being like, actually, well, where do you want to be in a couple of years' time? Like, so many people just have never even considered that question. So I think having a tribe of people who are probably at the same level of personal development maturity, or like have the same emotional development hunger as you do, is so important if you are in a role that you don't enjoy, because you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. One of the biggest blessings I had at the time was, I think, a friend who'd started her own business sat me down one day and she was like, Cal, do you do personal development? And I was like, huh? I was like, what does that mean? Like, what does that actually mean until you go into that space and you go to a bookshop and you're like, holy moly, there are so many books on self-help and personal development, but you don't know what you don't know. So I think the world could do with more curiosity in terms of, if you're like, actually, I'm not satisfied with where I'm at, well, what's the question that you want to ask so that you can find better answers to your current experience? And if it's like, well, what are my strengths? Well, start there. Google, what are my strengths? Strengths Finder Gallup will probably come up, and that will lead you to the next thing, to the next thing. So I think curiosity is what we could do with more of.
Yeah, I think I absolutely agree with you. But I think one of the other problems is there's a real lack of awareness as to what self-development means. And I've noticed this with a couple of the live sessions that I've done. There is a view that self-development is going off to a Tony Robbins conference and everybody sits around and sings Kumbaya and then you will feel better. Well, that's not self-development. Self-development is getting a better understanding of why you behave the way you do and why others behave the way they do, so that you can learn to adapt your behaviors to them, plus understand them when they view the world in a particular way. Now, every human being is different, but there are archetypes, and it's incredibly useful to know what those archetypes are. Another thing to work on is the change management that we spoke about. How do I deal with change? How do I cope when I hit that valley of death and get through the next bit? How am I going to influence other people? Because that's the way I define leadership. Leadership is the ability to influence. And it doesn't mean you have to be a general in the army. If you are a breathing human being, you need to be a better leader, because you're going to have to influence your parents or your sister or your brother or your children or the people you work with, or anybody that you have any interaction with. You will have some sort of level of influence over them. And the more skillfully you can do that, the better you will be at everything that you do. Yeah, I mean, even in marriage, you need the ability to influence as well. You need the ability to compromise. And blackmail sometimes helps too, although I don't always recommend that. Sometimes I do, but not always. Yeah, so go and learn more about self-development. At least be curious enough to look at what's involved before you dismiss it outright, because my fear is I see a lot of people doing that, and I just know they're not going to be successful, because there's no way they can be unless they open up to that. But listen, I'm very keen to find out, what sort of customers do you work with today? So I know there'll be people out there listening thinking, I must find out more about what Cal does. Who do you work with today? Is it more of a one-to-one personal type coaching, or do you work with companies and help them with their teams?
Great question. So it's actually evolved a lot the more that I learn about this particular market. And when I say this particular market, I'm talking about retail, almost franchises. I've noticed that I attract organizations that have like 3+ franchising teams. So there's a leadership team, and then they've got their individual teams, and it's retail so that they interact directly with the customer, like a face-to-face customer, because that was my journey. I worked at Gloria Jeans, NAB as a teller, Optus. But who I work with specifically is, I have found if the leader, so the person who employs me and pays me, if they're open to change, then I work with them. But if they don't, then I work specifically with the store managers and the general manager. And we work, it really depends on what's the problem that they need solving. So for example, one of my clients right now, their biggest goal and challenge over the next 12 months is increasing the sales conversion of each team member. Now, to do that, what's missing at the moment is just sales skills. So many of them have just self-taught themselves how to sell, but there's no real sales methodology that they apply. So they don't understand the concept of having to build the problem. So they're coming in, being the doctor, and just being like, before even asking them, how are you feeling? The patient says, oh, I'm not well enough. Okay, here's a prescription. And the patient's like, but how do you know what's wrong with me? So it's teaching them that sales journey. So we work in, now I'll share this with you, but it will probably change depending on what the client needs, is we're just starting off on a full day training, giving them the sales fundamentals. But for many of them, it's about, how do I now apply this and practice it so that I can get better? So what we've come up with is, because they've got five stores with 5 different managers, is on a weekly basis, we'll do a webinar. Now, the purpose of the webinar is to do a live demo, because we wanted to leverage everyone's time, because in retail, just time is of the essence. But also for them to learn best practice from each other. Because the idea is, don't just rely on me as a coach. I'm not here to give you answers. You actually have a wealth of wisdom and knowledge amongst your group already. And it's actually teaching them to learn to ask each other for help and to be each other's students and teachers. And then on a monthly basis, we'll get all the store managers together, where it's a way for them to actually experience community and to be a team, because one person will be the store manager, everyone else will still be store managers, but acting as the team. And they'll get live feedback, live coaching, because I think that's one of the most effective ways to learn. That's how I learned. I literally was doing sales calls every day. My coach would be there and be like, give me instant live feedback. So that's what we're doing. But like I said, over the next 90 days, we'll probably tweak that depending on what's not working, what is working. But from my experience, that's probably been one of the more effective ways to do it.
Fantastic. It sounds like fun, actually, not work at all.
I know.
As well as you.
That was the idea. It was like, how do we, the last thing I'd want to give them is death by PowerPoint or read some more study guides or notes. It's like, hey, let's just like do life together. So like, let's get in a room together.
Yeah. Well, that's how we learn best, is when we're having fun and experience
Yeah.
as well, which sounds like you've got a lot of.
Yeah, exactly.
Before we go, I know you've got something for our viewers today. Would you like to tell them a little bit more about that?
Yeah, awesome. So when Angela and I first spoke, she asked me, well, how is it that you help your clients when you first start off with? Now, what I've realized is, so often you just don't know what you don't know. For many of us, if we're running a retail business or we've been in business for a couple of years and things aren't going the way that we want it to be, there are so many like moving parts to the business machine. It's like, well, where do I know where to start? So that's why I created the Business Diagnostic, because when you know that fundamentally all businesses are the same and have the same inputs into it anyway. So it's a really basic questionnaire that you can answer literally yes or no, I've got this or I don't have this. And the idea is to help you bring awareness around where are the gaps in your business right now, so that you sort of know what best practice looks like. and then you know where the gaps are. So then you'll be able to make a decision around, okay, where do I start? Because there are so many things that you could work on, but just focus on the ones that are going to move the biggest needle for you over the next 90 days. Once you've done that, move on to the next one. So what we've got for the viewers and the listeners today is you can literally just download a free copy of this gaps analysis that I've created on my website. It'll take you like less than 10 minutes you just print it off and just complete it. And then after that, if you want to have another conversation, just email me and we can chat about how we can support you.
Fantastic. And that actually goes to the personal development of your business. You've got to stay on top of who your business is and what it's doing and what its strengths and weaknesses are. So thank you so much for that. We will include a link to Cal's website in the comments below. And for anybody who would like to know more, we'll also include a couple more details on Cal. So Cal, thank you so much. As always, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. And
you're so welcome.
We're so lucky.
Such a delight, team. Thank you guys for joining and, you know, being on the session with us. It's been so good to have you. So such a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for watching and listening. I hope you managed to walk away with something, even if it's just one thing that you've learned from the session today. If you have any questions, just reach out to us or leave a comment below, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.